When I received the video sent by Uncle Ray, I didn't anticipate the dramatic change it would bring to my life. I had just arrived home from a tiring day at work, ready to unwind with my usual evening routine, when my phone buzzed with an unusual message from Uncle Ray. While we did chat occasionally, sending random messages wasn't typical for him, especially with a subject line that read, "You need to see this, Alie, I'm sorry." Intrigued yet slightly nervous, I clicked on the video, and suddenly, my world felt topsy-turvy. There, on the screen, was Amber, my sister, lounging contentedly with a drink in hand and a self-satisfied smirk, basking in the familiar ambience of my parents' backyard during one of their weekend barbecues. Comfortably unconcerned with the fact that she was being recorded, she exclaimed, "Oh, come on. Allie's too naive to ever kick me out. She just lets me stay rent-free like a fool." Her laughter, mixed with that of other voices, our cousin Matt, her friend Lindsay, even our dad, filled the background. Amber nonchalantly continued, "She really thinks I'm struggling," dismissively shaking her head in mock sorrow. Like, poor me. Can't afford a place on my own. Please, I earn much more than she has any idea. Why spend money when my dotty sister lets me live for free? Her words wounded me, each repetition driving the point painfully home. Too naive to ever kick me out. The phrases echoed through me, leaving me feeling paralyzed, the air around me suddenly thick and stifling. For the past 3 years, Amber had been residing in my house. When she'd initially moved in, it seemingly came from necessity, or so I believed. Heartbroken from a recent breakup and having lost her apartment, she had reached out to me in tears. "I just need a little time, Alie," she had pleaded. "I promise I'll get back on my feet soon." Naively, I offered her a rent-free place, with no bills to concern her until she regained stability. And now, here she was, mocking my generosity. Rather than being consumed by anger, I experienced an odd, unsettling peace instead. Uncle Ray's message appeared once more. "I wasn't sure if I should send this, but you needed to know." Contemplating his words, my fingers lingered over my phone's keyboard. The old version of myself, ever ready to grant Amber the benefit of the doubt, wanted to seek context, to allow her a chance to clarify. But the altered part of me, now confronted with undeniable truth, simply replied, "Thank you. Don't mention it to her, I'll take care of it." I refrained from challenging Amber, bypassed any confrontations, and did not storm into her space demanding explanations. Instead, I greeted her the next morning over breakfast just as cheerfully, inquired about her work, showed interest in her tales, and laughed at her jokes. Yes, I resolved everything would be transformed when the next rent was due, which she'd never once been required to pay. Amber, oblivious to the trial looming ahead, strolled into the kitchen the morning after I watched the video, completely ignorant of my newfound awareness. "Morning," she greeted with a dramatic stretch. "I slept like a baby last night. That guest bed of yours is insanely comfy." I responded with a smile, glad to hear it, without revealing that throughout the night before, I had been crafting my plans. For 3 years now, Amber had occupied my home, liberally using what was mine as though it belonged to her. Taking the last of my oat milk, she poured herself a cup of coffee, humming blissfully unaware of my knowledge. Dropping into a chair, she rubbed her temples. "Ugh, work is crazy busy right now. If my boss emails me about reports one more time, I might just lose it." I feigned attentiveness while memories of the video, "I make more than she even knows," replayed in my mind. With a steady income and a reliable job, Amber had the resources to move when she wished. She'd simply been deceiving me, exploiting my hospitality to the fullest. There was no reason, no justification for her continued presence in my home. Casually, I inquired, "So, what are your plans this month?" Amber appeared puzzled. "What do you mean?" Trying to keep my tone light, I said, "You've been staying for a considerable time now. Thought you might be contemplating your future steps, maybe scouting for a new place." She responded with a dramatic groan. "Oh, Alie, I've got so much going right now. Moving is the last thing I need, and besides, it's incredibly pricey." I suppressed a scoff. She could undoubtedly afford it. That much was evident. But I kept my expression neutral as I said, I understand. But I was already pondering if it was time for some changes around here. Amber barely lifted her gaze from her phone, asking, "What kind of changes?" I allowed the silence to linger, creating a slight tension before saying casually, "Well, starting next month, it would make sense for you to start paying rent." Amber hesitated for just a moment, then released a breathy laugh. "Wait, are you serious?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I mean, you've been here for 3 years. Amber raised her eyebrows in disbelief. "Come on, Alie. We're family. Do you really expect me to pay rent?" I sipped my coffee, watching her reaction. "Yes," I confirmed, and my words seemed to hit her like a shock. Amber leaned back in her chair, her expression shifting between amusement and disbelief. "Wow, okay. I just didn't see this coming from you." Her tone held a hint of defensiveness. "I've let you stay here out of kindness and love, and now I'm the one being unreasonable?" I chuckled lightly. "It's just basic rent, Amber. Nothing extravagant." "I thought $1,200 a month would be reasonable." Amber's jaw dropped. $1,200? That's ridiculous. I raised an eyebrow. "Not really. It's below the market rate in this area. You're honestly getting a deal." She shook her head, her coffee cup landing on the table with a loud clink. "Are you really doing this to me after everything?" I nearly asked her what everything she thought she had done for me meant, but instead, I smiled and carried my coffee cup to the sink. "Just giving you a heads up so you have time to organize your finances." Amber stared at me, her mouth slightly ajar as if about to argue, but no words came. She just blinked, looking as though she couldn't quite process the situation. I realized she anticipated I would feel guilty, retract my words, and assure her it was all a joke. She had no idea the genuine storm was yet to come. For the next few days, Amber avoided me. Normally, she'd be everywhere in the house, sprawled on my couch, watching Netflix until late, leaving dishes in the sink for me to wash. But after our rent conversation, she made herself scarce, communicating in short, clipped phrases when we happened upon each other. Yet, I could feel her frustration simmering beneath the surface. She wasn't accustomed to being told no. I'd been overly accommodating, and now, with just a minor shift, the cracks in her demeanor were visible. Good, I thought. I wanted her to feel the discomfort, the tension, the realization that she no longer held all the cards. She believed I was naive, wrapped around her finger. She was about to discover just how mistaken she was. It was Friday night when Amber decided to confront me. I was in the living room curled up with a book when she stormed in, no pleasantries, just raw irritation. "So," she began, folding her arms, "are you really serious about this rent thing?" I looked up unfazed. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" she scoffed, pacing back and forth. "I just don't understand why now, after 3 years." I set my book aside, looking at her directly. "Because it's time, Amber. You have a job, you earn well. There's no reason you shouldn't contribute." Her lips tightened with frustration. "We're family, Alie. Families should help each other. You're really going to start treating me like just any tenant?" I didn't waver. "You're living here like one. Why shouldn't you pay like one?" Amber's nostrils flared, the gears in her mind visibly turning, seeking a way to shift the narrative. Then, as if on cue, she switched tactics, her voice softening. "Look, I might joke around, but I do appreciate you, okay? I've been dealing with a lot." Classic Amber, trying to guilt-trip me. I tilted my head. "A lot," she sighed, nodding. "Work stress, personal stuff, life." She added, "I don't talk about it because I don't want to be a burden," letting the weight of her statement hang in the air before I asked, "So, you have the money then?" Amber blinked. "What?" I reminded her, "You said it's life stress, not financial, so paying rent shouldn't be an issue, right?" Her expression twitched before she quickly masked it. "I mean, technically, yeah, I could." Amber dismissed the idea of paying with a wave of her hand, but questioned why she should, pointing out that I hardly needed the money, like someone struggling. Her belief was clear. She saw my kindness as obligatory, not reciprocated. A slow, A amused smile spread across my face. The issue wasn't my need. It was about fairness. Fairness, Amber exclaimed incredulously, letting out a bitter laugh. You've really changed, haven't you? I kept my voice light, suggesting maybe I had opened my eyes. For a brief moment, a flicker of panic appeared in her expression as she realized control was slipping from her grasp. She inhaled sharply, shaking her head, ultimately refusing to pay rent. I held her gaze, allowing silence to linger before simply stating, "Okay." She anticipated an argument or a negotiation, but neither came. As the first of the month arrived, Amber stormed into the kitchen, carefreely grabbing a coffee and one of my protein bars, believing I had given up and she had won. At precisely 9 a.m., her phone buzzed, and her attitude shifted. She frowned, surprised by an email from my rental management company. "What is this, Alie?" she asked, turning her phone to me. Nonchalantly, I replied that it was her lease agreement. Amber's expression turned to disbelief. "My what?" she demanded. I repeated, "Your lease agreement with the property management company." She read the email with rising alarm. It stated her first rent payment was due immediately. I confirmed the seriousness of it all. She let out another incredulous laugh. "You're mad." I merely raised an eyebrow, asserting I was simply finished with being taken for granted. Her facade began to crumble. She quickly shifted to victim mode, pleading, "You're my sister. Aren't we supposed to support one another?" "We are," I responded, "and for 3 years I supported you without asking for anything." Her defenses weakened as she argued I failed to warn her. I chuckled lightly, reminding her of the month's notice I had given. Annoyed and with no options, she mentioned not having the money. I pointed out her bragging about VIP tickets for festival, revealing her financial capability. Her face turned red as she realized her pretense had failed. I offered 2 choices: sign the lease and pay like an adult, or leave. Anger surged in her, but she knew my resolve was firm. She crossed her arms, challenging, "And if I refuse either option?" I calmly explained the lease's eviction terms, stating she would receive a 14-day notice, leading to a potential eviction if she didn't comply. Her eyes widened, clearly insulted by the idea. But I remained steadfast. "You brought this on yourself." Pacing with frustration, her world upended. She muttered disbelief at my actions. Her realm of control collapsed entirely. Faced with a new reality, she couldn't escape. As I picked up my coffee once more, Amber suddenly stormed toward the door with her bag in tow. "I'm going out," she snapped. "Take your time," I replied cheerily, adding, "Just a heads up, if you don't settle the payment by the end of today, the 14-day notice will be issued first thing tomorrow." Amber slammed the door without a response, which made me smile because, for the first time in 3 years, I felt I had control. That evening and the following night, Amber didn't return. It didn't surprise me. It was just her style, avoiding issues, shirking responsibility, hoping they'd vanish on their own. But I wasn't her problem. I was her landlord. By the time she returned 3 days later, I was prepared. Close to midnight, I heard the front door creak open while I sat on the couch, feigning deep focus on my laptop. As Amber walked in, her posture conveyed more than irritation. She looked furious. She aggressively kicked off her heels, nearly hurling them at the wall, her hair disheveled as if too distracted to care. Her eyes shot towards me, revealing the storm brewing within. I remained silent, waiting for her to initiate the conversation. She abruptly dropped her purse on the counter, taking a sharp breath. "We need to talk," she insisted. I closed my laptop slowly, leaning back. "I'm listening," I said. Amber crossed her arms, her frustration palpable. "Did you actually file the paperwork?" A dry laugh escaped her lips, even as a twitch formed on mine. She had checked. "Yes," I affirmed calmly. She laughed hollowly. "Jesus, Alie, are you really evicting me?" I raised an eyebrow, countering. "No, Amber, I provided options. You just didn't like them." Her frustration boiled as she moved closer. "I was away for 3 days. Why didn't you try to communicate before this?" I tilted my head, recalling. "Funny. I remember you walking out mid-conversation. Her hands clenched into fists. You don't understand. I was figuring things out. Mimicking curiosity, I asked, figuring out how to keep living here for free? Amber's face turned red, ready to argue but stopping, acknowledging the truth. Shifting tactics, her expression softened, eyes showing genuine fear. Her voice lowered. Look, I messed up, okay?
I shouldn't have said what I said.
I was venting, I didn't mean it. I stood firm. Yes, you did. Amber hesitated. No, she stammered, but I interjected. You called me an idiot. You laughed, mentioning how I was too dumb to evict you, boasting about playing me for a fool. She swallowed hard, avoiding my gaze. I pressed on. I heard it. I saw you say it, and so did Uncle Ray. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. You told him? Laughing, I corrected. He told me. Amber's mouth opened, but words evaded her. Realization striking, she was exposed, caught, unable to lie her way out. Exhaling sharply, she paced. Okay, I get it. I messed up. I watched silently as she unraveled. I don't have anywhere to go, Alie, she confessed, halting, eyes on me, anticipating my rescue. But this time, I wouldn't help her. Instead, I opened my laptop. Actually, I started scrolling. That's not true. Amber frowned. What? I had preemptively scouted affordable apartments nearby. There are 3 locations within a 10-mile radius that suit your budget, I explained, clicking a listing. And if you apply this week, one of the landlords agreed to waive the security deposit. Amber's jaw tightened. I can't believe you did that. I shrugged. Why not? You have a job. You earn well, as you keep reminding me. She scoffed, shaking her head. You're actually enjoying this, aren't you? I met her gaze calm. No, Amber, but I refuse to be used any longer. She took a sharp breath but didn't argue. She couldn't. She knew I was right. I had given her every possible chance, treated her with kindness and patience, provided options, but ultimately, she made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. Amber chuckled bitterly. So, this is really happening. I nodded. It is. She glanced toward the hallway, her bedroom, or more accurately, the space she'd long treated as her own, never truly hers. Turning back, her jaw set. Fine, she muttered. I'll be out by the end of the week. I gave her a knowing smile.
Good.
Just like that, the balance of power shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't the fool or the pushover. I was free. Amber moved out 3 days later. Uttering few words as she did a night before her departure, Amber sat in the living room, staring blankly, with a half-packed suitcase beside her. I hesitated but decided to sit across from her. It was the first time in years Amber wasn't acting superior or manipulative. She appeared small, maybe even a bit lost. Tentatively, I said, Amber. She glanced up at me. I noticed the exhaustion in her eyes. I don't hate you, I mentioned quietly. Amber snorted. You could have fooled me. I sighed. I just wish things had been different. She muttered. Yeah, me too, looking at her hands. Silence stretched before I added. I didn't do this to hurt you. Her jaw tightened. It still feels like you did.
I nodded. Maybe.
But when would you have left if it wasn't now? Would you have ever? She stayed silent, acknowledging the truth. She never would have left willingly. She admitted, it was easy because you made it easy. I nodded. That's why I had to stop. She stared at me, finally sighed. So this is it? I gave a small smile. Looks like it. Amber shook her head and laughed quietly. Guess I can't call you an idiot anymore. I smirked. No, you can't. For the first time, honesty prevailed between us. The next morning, she left without drama, just a packed suitcase and a simple message. I'm out. Good luck, Alie. I wasn't angry. I felt complete. A week later, walking through my silent house felt like a long overdue hug. It was mine again. A knock disrupted my thoughts. Uncle Reese stood there. He asked how it felt. I smiled. Peaceful. He chuckled. Admired the house. Looks better already. I laughed and agreed. Ray noted. It wasn't easy, but it was right. I sighed. Then why does it feel weird? He explained. She's your sister, but that doesn't mean she was good for you. You didn't have to keep letting her use you. Processing his words, I asked, do you think she'll be okay? Ray exhaled. She'll have to be. Amber had to take responsibility, grow up. Alone, I sipped wine that night, staring at the quiet street. For the first time in ages, I felt freedom. I had let someone occupy my space, my peace for years. Now I was released from that. Amber underestimated me, but I had stopped being the fool.